and welcome to World Insight with me, Tianwei, coming to you from Beijing on CGTN. Coming up on today's program, U.S. Transportation Secretary Elaine Chao takes my questions in a one-on-one exclusive interview about what it means to be the only Chinese-American woman to serve two U.S. presidents as a cabinet member in history, and the latest between China and the United States. Children in war-torn areas hold the spotlight in my conversation with Henrietta Fore, the Undersecretary General of the United Nations, who's also the UNICEF Executive Director. And get up and close with the coach of China's short track speed skating team, retired skater Li Yan, who tells us about her PyeongChang Olympics experience and the future of Winter Games in China.
It's a really good.
You're watching World Insight. I'm Tianwei. Let's begin today's program with the first Asian American woman appointed to be in the president's cabinet in American history, Secretary Elaine Chao. She is currently the Secretary of Transportation in the U.S. This is her second cabinet position. She served as the U.S. Secretary of Labor from the year 2001 to 2009, the longest tenured Secretary of Labor since World War II. I caught up with her, Secretary Chao, over the weekend. She shares with me her vision on China-U.S. relations at the crossroads of a rapidly changing world, and of course, her personal stories. Madam Secretary, what a pleasure to see you here in Beijing again.
Thank you so much for having me.
I understand it has been a very fruitful trip for you. You met with the Chinese Premier. Both sides talk about where the trade should be going.
Well, this has been a wonderful visit in terms of my very many meetings with the state officials. And it has given me and my country a great deal of information and insight into the major issues that are occurring between our two countries.
The Chinese side, the Chinese Premier, according to the press release after your meeting, has been talking about mutual respect communication between the two sides. Do you think there has been, there will be, when the biggest delegation coming from Washington representing the administration going to be here in Beijing?
I think from the United States point of view, there is of course mutual respect. I think what is complicating things on both sides is the cultural differences. Respect is culturally based. And so when there are cultural misunderstandings and miscues, that can translate into unintentional friction. You know, the Americans are very spontaneous, dynamic, voluble. They are very open in how they express themselves. This is just their culture. America is a very young country. It's very dynamic. It doesn't have a long period of history. So there are not so many rules and regulations in terms of behavior. Whereas for some other countries that have long histories, it may be a little bit more difficult. We have to understand the Chinese and how they see things. And I think the Chinese need to understand how America sees things. So increased communications is good for mutual understanding and better communications.
That would give you a lot of responsibility, I would assume, Secretary Chao, in order to build this bridge between the current administration in Washington.
Well, I'm not the only one. There are so many other people who are quite cognizant and familiar with this relationship. But certainly, my trip this time can bring back valuable insights from my meetings that I will convey to our side. But I'm here in Beijing to attend the 9th Transportation Forum. My 3 themes as Secretary of Transportation are: 1, safety. We must always be very vigilant about keeping our transportation system safe. Secondly, we are both concerned about infrastructure, how to repair, rebuild, and reinvest in our respective infrastructures. And then thirdly, all of us around the world are trying to grapple with the issue of emerging technologies, how to engage in emerging technologies such as autonomous vehicles, drones, in a way that will ensure safety, security, and also privacy. These are legitimate public concerns.
These are all fascinating topics.
They are.
We could go days of talking about this one by one, but as Secretary Chao, talking about infrastructure, the American Engineering Society, I know they put a report every year suggesting now the grading of the American infrastructure is only D+. Of course, you see the urgency as the Secretary of Transportation, but how to make sure infrastructure is not just a political debate, but being implemented for the real people's lives?
I think infrastructure cannot be a political debate. It must be a bipartisan issue. So that is why the infrastructure needs of America are so paramount on the President's agenda. So at this 9th Transportation Forum, both our countries are concerned about infrastructure from a safety point of view, in fact, because we need to make sure that our infrastructure is safe and that it is built in a way that will promote safety. And so we talked about how do we exchange ideas and information, best practices about making safe infrastructure. And then secondly, disaster relief, disaster emergency preparedness. Both our countries have seen disasters in the past year. In America, we had in rapid succession 3 major hurricanes that wreaked devastation on our people and infrastructure. And how do we work with one another, once again, learn from each other, and how to respond in emergency crises situations like that, and rebuild and restore our infrastructure as quickly as possible for the people.
1.5 trillion, something about that is likely to be the budget for infrastructure building. But that is mainly likely, according to President Trump's plan, coming from the private sector. I know there's a debate and discussion about that inside your country. Where should the funding come from? Where should it be? As the Secretary of Transportation, Madam Chao, how do you see that plan?
Well, let me explain. It's very, it's actually very simple. So the President envisions $1.5 trillion investment spending. And there will be a minimum of $200 billion in direct federal spending. And the rest will be leveraged through the state and local governments and the private sector.
Have you talked about your specific plan with President Trump?
Of course, it's not my plan. It's his plan.
So will this be all American companies participating in these infrastructure projects, or foreign companies could also participate?
Well, the President does make it very clear that we would prefer to have American jobs. So for any foreign entities that is coming in, I would suggest that they set up a U.S. presence and that they partner with a local entity, so that they can understand what it is like to do business.
But Madam Secretary, there are concerns coming from the Chinese company that even though they have a joint venture partner, or even though they work with American companies, they still have big problems getting access, particularly those concerning so-called technology.
I totally disagree with that. Technology, yes, because we have rules about technological transfers. And I think those are very reasonable rules.
But you just said infrastructure also concerning a lot with technology as well.
No, at this point we're talking about building bridges, building roads. There are certain countries that are interested in high-speed rail, not only China, but others as well. So my suggestion would be for them to partner with a local partner, because the federal government will not be deciding on the local projects. We will fund these projects to a certain percentage, but the local projects will be decided by the local entities. So that's why these, all these entities, be they American or foreign, they need to find a local project first that they can invest in. And then once again, when we talk about infrastructure, the majority of that will be for repairing and rebuilding new infrastructure, and about 25% of that will be devoted to rural America, and then about 15% will be devoted to transformative technology infrastructure.
Very important information. Thank you for sharing, Madam Secretary. China also has a lot of interest in infrastructure. As you said, it's not just the building the bridges and roads, but more than that. For example, the Belt and Road Initiative. I do understand that, Madam Secretary, there are different views in China and the United States about the BRI. As the Secretary of Transportation, how do you see that potential of possible cooperation between the two sides?
You know, as you talk about one belt, one road, that there'll be opportunities for American companies to invest as well. So we hope that they'll get to know what projects are available and be given the chance to invest.
About your growth as a Chinese American for both inside the family and certainly beyond in the public service. How do you see the contribution of Chinese Americans in the American society?
America is a very diverse country. In the next 10, 20 years, it will be a country in which the minority populations will become the majority. And so America will no longer be just a society of one color. It's multi-hued, and it is very diverse. And if you have a diverse background, it's actually an advantage. And so don't be afraid of your background. You know, participate in American mainstream. I always encourage people to do that. But having been an immigrant, I understand the feelings of vulnerability. I remember coming as an immigrant, my parents were so incredibly hopeful and optimistic, and I was very lucky to grow up in a family like that. But I can see where many other families, there is fear, there's anxiety, there's a feeling of vulnerability. And so I encourage newcomers to our society to have faith and to have hope. Also, another advice I would give people, I think for a lot of Asian Americans, we wait to be asked to join. And I said, don't wait, because in America there's so much energy, so much momentum. If you wait to be asked, you won't come in. So just jump in. If you're interested, go in and just, you know, participate.
I see the vigor there. You have just demonstrated, Madam Secretary.
And then sometimes, if you don't succeed, no big deal. There's so many opportunities. Okay, so if you wanted to go into this one club and they were not nice to you, so what? It's their loss. Go to someplace else. There are always open doors. And then I also say, you know, when we have adversity and challenges, sometimes, as much as we don't want these adversities, they are sometimes good. They help us grow, and they help us mature and become more insightful.
Yes.
So when I look upon my experiences, you know, as a newcomer to American society, I think all the challenges and adversities my family and I have had is good for me, in that it has taught me to be a better leader, to show more empathy, to understand other people's feelings about vulnerability and anxiety. And I think that indeed does make me a better leader.
Madam Secretary, what a pleasure seeing you here in Beijing. All the best.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, ma'am.
Thank you.
Thank you. Really appreciate it. My conversation earlier with Elaine Chao. You're watching World Insight with me, Tian Wei. Still to come on our program. In a sit-down interview with UN Under-Secretary General Henrietta Fore, who's also the new UNICEF chief, she talks about efforts to save children from war-torn areas. And we talk about the PyeongChang Games and the future of winter sports with Olympic skating coach Li Yan right after this break. Welcome back. In war-torn Syria, after 7 years of conflict, Syrians are facing one of the world's biggest humanitarian crises. Hundreds of thousands died and millions more have fled their homes. Children have been extremely vulnerable amid the conflict. Many lost their parents in the bombings, and those who managed to flee failed to make it to a new home in Europe. With the Islamic State mostly driven out of the country's territory, have the lives of the Syrians improved? Take a look at this.
It's a full day of mixed emotions for Yahya Omar Shugur and his 2 young boys. With bags packed, they leave the house they've called home for the last 3 years, never to return. The Istanbul municipality of Esenyurt has arranged to take Yahya, his sons, and another family of 6 back to Syria. Last month, the Esenyurt municipality facilitated the repatriation of 35 Syrians to Afrin and Jarabulus, following recent Turkish military operations in northern Syria to clear the area of terrorist elements.
There is a proverb in Turkish. They put the nightingale in a golden cage. It still craves for its country. If they put the bird into a cage, it still wants to be free. We are treating them very well, but they have their own country.
While many Syrians feel it is now safe enough to return, others are not so convinced, and others still want to continue with the life they have built in Turkey. The families share emotional goodbyes to those close to them staying in Turkey.
May God help you reach there safely. May God protect you from the thieves. May God protect you.
There is a lot of excitement as the 15-hour across Turkey to the Syrian border journey begins. Mohammed was only 8 when he arrived in Turkey.
I miss Syria. I miss my people. I miss my friends. I miss my grandpa's house. I will go say hi to my uncles and kiss their hands.
Come morning, we will be at the Onca border crossing, the last stop in Turkey on their journey home. According to Turkish officials, more than 150,000 Syrians have returned in the past 20 months, and in a few hours, these 2 families can be added to those numbers.
The realities in Syria. UNICEF is working to provide urgent assistance to children affected by violence in Syria, including millions of children refugees driven from the country. Who better to ask about these efforts than Henrietta Fore, the under-UN Secretary General, who's also the UNICEF Executive Director. She just took office as UNICEF chief this year. For more than 4 decades, she has worked to champion economic development, education, health, and humanitarian assistance, as well as disaster relief in both public service and the private sector. The wars that is going on around the world, may I say particularly in Syria, the fate of the children there focus of the world attention. What can UNICEF do? Can you really save lives? Can you really help those people out of the devastating situation?
Chen-Wei, yes, we can. So UNICEF can be there before, during, and after those emergencies.
Are you there?
Yes, we are. So in this particular case, in Syria, we have people in Syria. As you know, the violence, the displacement is in so many parts of Syria. So having staff in each town with internally displaced people centers, so getting them water, blankets, food, health supplies, hygiene kits, it's so basic, and yet if you have to leave and run away from your home, what you need is, you need to be clean, you need to have water,
right.
You need your family. We also try to make sure that you're connected to your family. So sometimes families get split up in times of violence. So they are running, especially young children, in different directions. So we try to give them name bands so that we don't lose them, so that we know where they're from. Sometimes in the trauma, they can forget what village they're from, their own name, the name of their parents, and yet we don't want them to lose their identity and their families. So we help with that. We also help when they cross the border. So when they're refugees out of Syria, they go into Lebanon or Jordan or Turkey or Iraq, we help with making sure that there are schools. So that, let's say, the Lebanese school system, they now are running a shift for Lebanese children and a shift for Syrian children. So the teachers work extra, but we are trying to get them into a school system so that they can learn how to read and to write. because with the violence going on for 5 years, a young child can miss learning how to read and write. And if that happens in a number of places around the world, it's true in South Sudan, it's true in many of the places, your concern is the concern that we feel, the urgency that we feel.
But Edie Fore, as you may know, many of these children, they do not have necessarily a family connection, which means these children have to act alone. And therefore, many of the supplies that you're talking about, many of the opportunities that you're talking about, these children might not have enough strength to grab them.
Yes.
So how to make sure that those children are having the real opportunity and equal opportunity with those children that are having families?
Yes, 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 you're exactly right. And so that's part of the puzzle of working with children. Children have to feel safe.
Yes.
They have to feel protected.
They're the weakest party.
Yes, they are, and they're the most affected by all of this violence. So if we can create child-friendly places and places of rest where they can just pause in terms of everything around them falling apart, that helps. And then if we can get protection services, because as you know, if you're a young person, you're alone, you're very vulnerable.
Yes.
You're vulnerable to groups that might want to grab you for their
Whatever
militia,
reason, yes.
or for other purposes, trafficking in young people. So having safe places for children is very much part of our duty and our responsibility worldwide.
But besides that, what else can UNICEF do? Can you call on governments from around the world, ask them to look at their own plans, look at how they're dealing with Syria, to ask both sides in Syria about their plans for the future of the country, look at what they're doing to the children on the ground. Can you do that as well?
Yes. So Tianwei, just as you use your voice to speak out on behalf of all of us, so UNICEF uses its voice worldwide for children.
What is the latest try about Syria, for example?
So we are asking that there be no more violence, that there be access, humanitarian access into every community. Every single individual, particularly the children, should have the ability to have food, to have water, to have hygiene, and to have a chance at an
But are you being
education.
listened?
One's never listened to enough. We do not have enough access. There is not enough sense by the world community of responsibility for these many young lives. But we talk with governments all over the world. We work in 190 countries. Some governments, at some times in their electoral cycle, feel very strongly about the role of women and children, and they take it to heart. They create excellent primary school systems, excellent early childhood development systems, newborn survival, secondary education. At other times, governments do not listen to us, but that's when you need the people to say, children are the most important opportunity we have. Let's look after them primary.
The world is changing so fast. There seems to be potential conflicts among countries that we have not witnessed before. So what does it mean for your role here, whether it is about the Middle East, whether it is about Africa, whether it is about the relationship between your major donors or the changes of landscape among your donors? What does that mean to you?
So there's an increased emphasis on children, and we hope that...
Hope it's not lip service.
I hope it's not lip service either. So we hope that we can convince a number of countries to really focus their foreign assistance on children. And if we can, I think we can make some great strides in the years ahead. But we're not going to do it alone. So it will be done with governments, it will be done with businesses, it will be done with the civil society at large, it will be done with the media. Those images on the beach of a child are what drive the world to make a change. We start saying, not here, no more. We should not let this exist. So come with us around the world, show the world, open up to what's happening. The needs are immense. Children are either a great liability, a ticking time bomb for the world, or they are the world's greatest opportunity. We see it as an opportunity. So if we can all back that, it will make a difference.
We have this massive debate in the world over the past 2 to 3 years about whether international system after World War II, whether international mechanisms such as the UN, UNICEF included, is still going to work. Are they still relevant? Should they still be the backbone of an international governance system?
So the United Nations system is a remarkable creation, and it did come out of wartime when there was an emergency need. And sometimes what that leads to is that people begin to lose interest because there's no longer an emergency at hand. And yet,
or they don't realize there is an emergency at hand.
Yes. And so we have 300 emergencies a year now. It is extremely important for the world to not lose hope, to not lose confidence. So when I see an organization like UNICEF that is capable, on the ground, can respond in times of crises and in times of just hope, then I would grab it. I would use it. I would try to make sure that every child in the world has nutrition, has education, has health care, sanitation, water, and protection. So why not use it? It's here. It's available.
Talking about China and UNICEF, you see, Fore, that China's role has been changing. Of course, it used to be the least developing economy, and now it is becoming quite an emerging economy. So how China is going to work with the UN system, and also how China is going to work specifically with UNICEF.
I think, Chang Wei, there's lots of chance here. So if China would pair with us to bring children at the heart of all development along the Belt Road, I think it would change not only how the projects are accepted by communities, but also how the experiences of China and the international world intersect. So, for example, if you're putting in a road, along that road, you would want a school, you'd want a health clinic, you'd like to work with the community, you'd like to work with the young people so that they can maintain that road. So there are many possibilities for employment and activities. We also want to think about what are the skills for the future. So this group of young people, we are inviting on behalf of the United Nations and the Secretary General, China to join for a young people's agenda. And if so, what are the life skills that you'll need as a young person? So if you're between the ages of 10 and 18, what are you learning that you're going to need for the future? And I think that will be an important area of activity. China has so many interesting models and examples to share with the world that we would like to be partners.
About the Belt and Road that you mentioned, it is still a plan, and it's a plan that China plays a leading role in coming to the design, but also it is inviting all the partnerships along the Belt and Road Initiative. How will that eventually come to be realized, and to what degree, eventually about what, is still a very open discussion. So, Fore, in this regard, how will the children's cause be integrated into the overall plan?
Yes, good. So, Chang Wei, you're on to the most important operational point. So UNICEF's strength is our people and our programs on the ground. We've been around for 70 years. So all along the Belt Road, in every one of those countries, we will have people and programs that have been there for years. So just as we do in China, working with Education Ministry or Health Ministry, working with local and regional governments, we are in each of those countries. So as the Belt Road Initiative moves into each country, we are already there on the ground to be the liaison with the local government, to shape the programs, because much of it is related to having ownership at the country level for, let's say, their early childhood development, their own primary school education, their national development plan. So UNICEF helps to shape that with a partner on the ground. We work with each of the ministries. We work with the local communities so that there is a sense of understanding about best practices, but there's also a commitment that parents have with children, that regional governments and national governments have with their citizens. And that becomes the strength of the network for Belt and Road.
But at the same time, ED4, you may be very well aware that the Belt and Road Initiative, after China has put forward this proposal, there are a lot of debates going on in the world. More than 80 of them, countries and organizations, have been supporting of this initiative, and they want to actively play a role. Others are still pondering. There's different opinions, too, from other countries. So how do you, as UNICEF, which is an international organization, it is within the UN system, work with this idea and work with this proposal and develop it?
So we feel that children are central. So children cannot wait. This is the time to act. And so as a result, we are impartial. We work with everyone.
Those rhetorical debates does not help with the fate of the children, does it?
No, it does not. And at least for us, we are the neutral, safe, impartial, knowledgeable partner. So we work with everyone. So if a country is interested in their children, we're there to help.
As simple as that.
Yes.
Exactly. But on the other hand, the ED4, China is still fighting with its own problems. Some of them are gigantic problems in its own sake. For example, poverty alleviation. China has been planning to eliminate extreme poverty in 3 years' time. That's going to be a daunting task if you know the exact number. So how do you think UNICEF can work with China on those important causes? Once China's problem is being solved, it is a big contribution to the world solving an ultimate question.
Yes, exactly. So let us say that the 32 to 34 million individuals in China who are below the poverty line, how do we reach them? We have a number of programs that we're doing jointly in China with a number of ministries, Ministry of Health, with MOFCOM, etc. The problem of stopping poverty into the next generation, because if you can alleviate poverty in one generation, particularly among women, they will pass on good practices. Then the children of that generation will be healthier, they will be better educated. So there are many benefits to eradicating poverty, and the lessons of China are extremely important. That we would work both in the western areas of China, which are many of the most vulnerable populations and the hardest to reach, to try to help those numbers. Because when China reaches its important goals, then the world, under the Sustainable Development Goals, will have a chance to reach its Sustainable Development Goals.
Henrietta Fore, the United Nations UNICEF Executive Director. You're watching World Insight with Tianwei. Still to come on the program. Get up and close and personal with Olympic skating coach Li Yan, whose speed skating team brought home the lone gold from the PyeongChang Games right after this break. Welcome back. You're watching World Insight with Tianwei. Beijing will host the 24th Winter Olympics, with nearby Hebei province also hosting games in the year 2022. Earlier this year, in February, China finished the PyeongChang Winter Olympic Games with 1 gold, 6 silver, and 2 bronze medals. The only gold came from the short track speed skating team. As the coach of the team and also a retired skater, Li Yan has always been the team's rock. Earlier, I caught up with her, and she shared with me some experiences in PyeongChang and the future of China's winter sports. How do you assess your performance this time during the Winter Games in PyeongChang?
I think we do well, because, you know, gold medal always is the standard for their performance. So Wu Dajing get 500-meter gold medal. And also he broken like 4 times Olympic record. Olympic always hard, you know. It's because everybody expecting doing very well at a certain time. We call Olympic game. So this is why too many people, too many athletes have under a lot of pressure, and you know, like they won't do well. So all the pressure come to one point. It's really hard to present themselves. It's same as for our team. So because our team, during like a 12 days competition, our expectation pretty high at a certain events, like a distance, but we didn't get what we want at some point. But our team spirit, like fighting spirit, is still there. This gold medal is the last day, last moment.
Exactly.
We're waiting for so long, and really, once we get it, that's like a pressure and exciting. It's different.
Do you have to control yourself in front of your athletes?
It's not. Like I said, it's a practice. It's just myself. I didn't pretend to do that. Maybe at some point, little bit emotion come up, but that's really short. That's short time. Most of the time, you really have to come to do what you're supposed to do.
Yes. Have they learned? Have they learned from you the skills?
See, 12 days, last day, without didn't get a gold medal. This means we overcome our difficulty time.
Ms. Li, on the one hand, you got a lot of these tasks. China wants to hold the Olympic Games, host the Olympic Games, and therefore want Team China to do well, right? On the other hand, you've got these post-90s generation. So they have very different personalities, right? So you have a lot of pressure, tasks, but at the same time, you have to adjust to the current generation, how they interact. Tell me about how you do it.
Like my daughter is a teenager, 13 years old.
I heard you talk about that before.
And, the athletes is the same. They are just get younger and younger. I think they teach me, I teach them. The new thing is a lot come from them. All the younger athletes, it's really good. That's the feeling, you with the young people, you're learning stuff, new stuff. You never feel you're old.
How do you see China's prospect in the coming Winter Games?
Beijing Olympic is a huge thing. It's a big thing for country. It's not easy to hold Olympics in different countries, but especially in China, because they require a lot of stuff, like all the rings, like ice and snow, those stuff. You should have like a lot of knowledge to put this together. Also for performance, you won't do well at home, right? Everybody won't do well at home. So also, you have a lot of hope and wish, and you try your best, but also you're under a lot of pressure as well. I just wish we can do well for China at the Beijing Olympics. Like we try to bring our team to reach as higher as we can to represent China in Beijing Olympics.
What is your plan now? Do you have already a set plan about leading up to the day of Beijing Olympic Games?
Like winter sports is never and is big enough in China for now. But after Olympic, for sure, we'll get bigger and bigger. A lot of people will, join the winter sports, either for fun or for the career. I don't know, but for sure will be a lot of people be there visiting the sports. The plan is you should have a goal. The goal is if you want to get a gold medal, or you want to be in the final, so you need to start right now. Once you have a big goal, you will try to do your best. You will overcome a lot of hard time. So this really require a team for the leaders like coach and athletes will follow same path to do a lot of stuff to make sure once Olympic comes, Beijing 2022 come, you're ready for that.
Of course, your team now are made up of different ages. Some of them will stay, some of them will leave by the year 2022. What is going to be the priority or criteria for you to choose whether someone stays or someone has to go?
So the plan is team 1, 2, 3. So from junior to senior, so all different age group. We're not cut for the age. you know, which age you can perform well. It's not because of that. It's because of ability. If you have ability to help in the team, if you have ability to win the medal for our country, so yes, that person will be chosen. So, but we always be prepared, like always. Like it's not even 4 years right now. It's every single day all counts.
What a pleasure seeing you.
Thank you.
Thank you. All the best.
Thank you very much.
And that is all the time we have for today. If you'd like to see more, try to find us World Insight CGTN into your search engine or check out our YouTube channel. You can also follow us on Twitter, Facebook, and Sina Weibo. From me, Tianwei, and everyone on the World Insight team, thanks for watching. And tune in again next time for insights across China and around the world. Good night.